Sir.
Hi, my name is Ryan Warnowski, and I am the producer of the Professor Garfield team. I want to introduce you to our team. We have Kelly Hopkins sitting to the left of me here. She was our usability lead for this project. In the back, we have Mackenzie Kitchell, and she was our liaison for the project. And then last, we have Holly Height, who was our future project development lead. So the goal for our Professor Garfield is the design challenge is to evaluate and envision Professor Garfield through research that examines the context of use among the three core stakeholders. And for this, we created 3 things that we wanted to go back to and hit on for each phase. So for teachers, we wanted to make sure that Professor Garfield was accessible. For kids, we wanted to make sure that Professor Garfield was fun. And for parents, we want to make sure Professor Garfield is trusted. But for this semester, we wanted to really focus in on teachers and making Professor Garfield accessible. Because if teachers aren't incorporating it in the classroom, it's a much more difficult challenge to get students to kind of go and find it on their own. So Garfield has a rich history with literacy. Kids would read the Garfield comic in the newspaper, and that would be a way that they learned how to read. However, the dialogue about literacy education is evolving. In the information age, digital skills are central to being successful in our highly connected internet society. And so this brings the notion of digital literacy to the forefront. So I kind of want to introduce, before I get into what digital literacy is, I want to introduce you to our problem statement and vision for Professor Garfield. Our problem statement is to re-envision the Professor Garfield content and organizational architecture to position the site as the leading voice in digital literacy education. And our thought process behind this is that technology is constantly in flux and constantly changing. So it's very important for us to position Garfield as a leader in digital literacy based on the way education should be delivered in the 21st century versus how it currently is. So now I'm going to go over what is digital literacy. To be digitally literate empowers students to use digital tools such as online learning environments, software, hardware for critical thinking and problem solving. And we were able to break this down through our academic research into 6 components. And I'm going to briefly go over them right now. The first is functional meaning making. And it's important to note that functional meaning making varies depending on the age of a child. But the idea behind functional meaning making is that you're teaching a child to go beyond the functional needs of a platform. So it's not enough to just ask a child to shoot a video. It's about teaching them how they can stitch those videos into a coherent scene. But that can also vary because telling a kindergarten to do that is not applicable. A kindergartner, asking them to shoot a video is digital literacy, but then you have to go back and ask them, did you like the way your video came out? Because imagine a kindergartner shooting a video for the first time, the video is all shaky. If they can see that and be able to answer, no, my video came out really shaky, I don't like that. That is the kind of idea of functional meaning making. We have critical thinking and creativity, and this is all about the content. So when you're thinking about critical thinking and creativity, you're thinking about the platform that the technology is delivering. So is the story best told for audio? Is it best told for video? It's those kind of decisions that students have to make. Collaboration, specifically online collaboration, is students need to be able to communicate effectively with each other in an online space. To where if one student doesn't have a particular set of knowledge, that maybe another student has that, and they can have that exchange. Finding and selecting information is pretty straightforward. It's a student's ability to go on a Google search and be able to confidently say, like, this research is fact versus just a lie. Effective communication engagement is similar to critical thinking and creativity, but except we're not thinking as much about the story as we are about the audience that we're delivering the story to. And lastly, be safely. So kids need to be aware of how to be safe when they're using these online tools and how we need to avoid cyberbullying and not making comments that would be upsetting to a student. So we had a research question after we kind of discovered what digital literacy was and then how is digital literacy taught in the K-5 classroom. So one of the first things we did is we researched the current digital literacy education landscape. And what we were quickly able to find is that there's been a paradigm shift in teaching and learning because of technology. So classes are more focused on the STEM subjects, which is your science, technology, engineering, mathematics subjects. And then technology, while it's being used in the classroom, students are being more and more able to have iPads, but the iPads are just simply substituting a task that a student could be doing on a paper worksheet, but it's just on an iPad, and that is not a digital literacy activity. So then we specifically went and created a survey for East Central Indiana teachers that were in the K-5 classroom, and we asked them what digital literacies they found were most important, and when they told us after that what they said that they thought were most important, we then asked them how long they taught them specifically in a week. So most of them said that they would only teach a digital literacy component for 2 hours or less in a week. So how is and then continuing, how is digital literacy taught in the K-5 classroom? This is where we kind of moved into our empathy phase, where we held 2 brainstorming sessions, one with K-5 Burrs teachers and then one with elementary education majors. And then a lot of the times when we go out, when we were doing our research, a lot of people would say, well, you're just technology students in emerging media design and development. And so we found it very important for us to go over to Teachers College and establish a relationship with Dr. Kate Shively, who is a digital literacy expert. And she is signed on as a collaborative partner for moving on in the future. So we're going to have that relationship between teacher college students and then a digital literacy expert, which is going to help us moving forward. From all this research, we constructed key findings. The first key finding is that time prevents teachers from learning new digital tools as well as effectively implementing them in the classroom. And this can be looked at two different ways. The first way is that imagine if a student has a password and they can't figure out what their password is. A student can then throw a tantrum that can last for over 5 to 10 minutes, and then the teacher has to completely derail the progress of their class. In addition, teachers are, what we learned from our empathy research, that teachers are asked that, oh, you can learn this on your own in your free time when you come back at night after grading all day. It's only going to take you 5 minutes to learn these tools, and teachers don't have that outlet of help at the school that they work at. So students and teachers then are not taught how to fundamentally or critically use these digital tools, and that students and teachers are both evaluated based on the outcome rather than the learning process. So what you see, and we're starting to move away from it, the teacher salaries were based on ISTEP scores, and students were based on the outcome of the answer, but they weren't focused on the process of getting to that answer. So it's not really learning, it's just spitting out an answer for a test. Now we'll talk about our key findings for digital literacy, and these were used when designing our prototypes for what Professor Garfield would look like. So digital learning tools should not give students too much information. Rather, students should be encouraged to explore and find potential solutions. So you don't want to make a video that teaches a student how to record audio, but then walks them through step by step. They need to go through that learning process and explore and be able to communicate in that online environment and get feedback if they're struggling, or to find and select that information online that will help them solve the problem. So you don't want to give them the answers. Digital learning environments should foster collaboration, and I touched upon this earlier, but this is really going back to the point where students, if they don't have a certain set of knowledge, they can interact with their teacher or students in a safe environment and gain that knowledge in that way. And that digital learning tool should allow for constructive feedback during the learning process. So we're not going to be saying, congrats, you met this standard, but we're going to package this in an achievement form where students feel like they've actually accomplished something. So when we went ahead and created our final prototype for Professor Garfield, we created 3 pillars, and this was our framework we used for designing the prototype. We have play, and that is where students will play an existing Professor Garfield module that's been updated based on usability and then into HTML. After the student completes this module, they are then prompted to move on to our create pillar, and this is where students create content that teaches them digital literacy skills. And what is important about create is that there is a connection between play and create. If they're learning a phonics activity in play, that phonics is going to be incorporated into the digital literacy activity we design. And then lastly, our last pillar is achieve. So students are going to receive feedback and awards as they become digital literacy masters. So what we did for this project, we created 3 different personas. We created a Gen X persona, a millennial persona, and a baby boom persona. And this really helped us understand the motivations and frustrations that current teachers have. And these personas were created based on the research we did, both academic and then empathy research. So today I'm going to introduce you to Ann Wiles, who is our baby boomer. She's 62 and a kindergarten teacher. She's been teaching for 38 years. And she just recently learned that her school is going to be getting iPads for the kindergarten classroom, not for students to take home, but something that they're involved with. And this gives her a lot of anxiety because she's worried that she doesn't have the time to learn this. She's worried that she's not confident in her ability to effectively teach this to students. So this gives her a lot of anxiety. So I'm going to go back to the pillars that we set out for this semester, and that's making Professor Garfield accessible. So what I'm going to do is show you how we've designed Professor Garfield to be accessible for Ann Wiles. Is that better? Yeah, at least you can see. All right, so this is the final prototype we created for Professor Garfield. And we're going to show you how the home page is able to onboard Ann into the system and how simple it is for her to use. So what we've done is we have a quick tutorial on what Play, Create, Achieve is, and these are going to be hopefully Garfield animations in the future. And if you go ahead and tap play, the video is going to pop up, and there is audio. So there's audio that's going to say what play is and then lead into what create is, that when they tap create, they understand how that flow works.
On the home screen, simply tap play in the main navigation to view all the wonderful Professor Garfield content. Then select filters by grade and subject to easily
So right now we're going to go ahead and do that. So the idea behind this is that Anne does not have to be logged into Professor Garfield to access these modules, but she can get a sense of what the modules are and how easy it is to use them. And then we're going to prompt Anne to show her why it's valuable for her to sign in. So you can see here we have a variety of mathematics, English modules. They're not by grade or anything. But Anne can simply go ahead and tap kindergarten and language arts. And then you can see that content has changed to present just kindergarten and language arts modules. What you'll see in the red here is Narrate Garfield, and that is our digital literacy activity. So it's very easy to see how the learning game pairs with the digital literacy activity. So let's say we want to go ahead and learn about fishing with phonics. So this is where we're going to be popped up, and you're going to see that you can continue as a guest, or you can join and sign in. And join and sign in is going to tell teachers that they're going to be able to track their students' progress, and all these other benefits, get a class list, things that make learning really accessible for teachers based on the feedback we receive from teachers when designing the prototype. So for this example, we're just going to continue as a guest. You'll be able to see a difference between what these pages look like as a guest versus what it looks like as a signed in user of Professor Garfield. So what you can immediately see is that we have one, we're making it very clear what play is, and that's for fishing with phonics. That's your learning game, kindergarten language arts learning game. We're going to have a description, a video that demos the game, and then you can just go ahead and tap play, and then you'll be able to access that content. Or, if you want to have the option to go over play, you can go ahead and hit create. The idea is that we don't want to shoehorn anyone into going from play to create if they're just interested in a digital literacy activity, but we will offer incentives for going ahead and doing play first. So from this, I'll show you create too as well. So create is set up the exact same way, except on the left-hand side, you're going to see the digital literacy components, and the filter is going to work the exact same way as it did on the play page. And then our last pillar is achieve. So you can immediately see the different learning badges students can earn. And this is a feature that when you're logged in, because we have to be able to track the student's progress, and that's impossible without having a login feature and a back-end database. So what we've done is we've created a novice, apprentice, master structure. So as students unlock enough badges, they're going to receive a Garfield reward. That could be a printout or a Garfield origami character that they can go ahead and print out at their house. So at this point, Anne is very convinced that she's excited about using Professor Garfield in her classroom, and we're going to go through the sign-in process. We're going to hit join. We're going to switch over to teachers. And the class code is a feature that we incorporated based on teacher feedback. So what a lot of times teachers will tell you is that they don't want to have a sign-in process, but they want the features that a sign-in process requires. So they're conflicted in that notion. They want students to be able to use their thumbprint and be logged in, or something that's more immediate, but that presents different challenges to getting that backend to set up. So we did a lot of similar case research on how that backend works. And class codes was one of those solutions that we identified that made it simple, and then when we tested it with teachers, they seemed on board with that idea. So Anne's going to simply generate a class code, type in her information, and hit next. So this is what Professor Garfield is going to look like when Anne signs in the next time. Her class code is listed there, so it's not something she has to go digging for and looking for. It's very easy for her to find. And what she can do is when her students try to sign in to Professor Garfield, all they have to do is enter in that class code, and then they automatically populate into the class list. When we did our research on earlier prototypes, the class list was definitely the top feature teachers wanted to see first. And we wanted to make it very accessible for them. So you can see you have each student's name, and you'll be able to click on the student individually to go to that specific profile. But then we have a color coordination system. Green is complete, yellow is in progress, and red is not started. So green means that a student's either completed the digital literacy activity or the digital learning game. Yellow means that the teacher hasn't signed it, and the student has started it, but they didn't finish it in one sitting. And red means that the teacher assigned it, but the student has not started it yet. So you immediately get that glance of how that might work. So let's say Anne wants to go ahead and assign a kindergarten digital, or a kindergarten learning game. So she's going to go to learning games. She'll go to kindergarten, language arts, and then she sees fishing with phonics, and she wants to choose that one. So you see how this page is structured differently than the one that you saw before we signed in. Now you can go ahead and see the badges, and then there are teacher-specific options. So you can choose class, so you can choose the entire class, or you can pick individual students. Because digital literacy is something that varies student to student. A student might overachieve at a digital literacy skill, and you might want to assign them a harder activity than a simple one. So then you also have the option to assign the due date, and then any additional notes you want to leave. So let's go ahead and assign fishing with phonics. So now if we go back to her profile, maybe it's been a couple weeks since Anne has checked on what she's assigned, but she wants to do another assignment, but she's not sure what she's assigned. All she has to go to is My Assignments, and then you can see what she's assigned, and then the due dates that are there as well. So it makes it very easy, very accessible for Anne. And then another big feature is current projects. So these are all the submitted or open projects that Anne's class is, and they're organized in a feed by time. And what we've created here are two different comment features. We have class comments and teacher comments. The idea behind class comments is that that comment is the only way students can comment, and it's around the entire class, so every classmate can see it, but then it's also public to the teacher. And the reason that's important to us is that that kind of prevents the cyberbullying of knowing that your teacher is going to be able to see the comments that you post, and you're not going to be wanting to post an offensive comment. But then the teacher comment is that the teacher has a direct message just for that student, then they can just talk directly to the student without the rest of the class seeing. So that's really how you can see the feed, the different activities. That's really how we've made Professor Garfield accessible for Anne. But let's say I'm a student and I want to go ahead and join. So I'm going to go ahead, and you can see that we've had the notion of that you can pick or create your own character in the Garfield universe, and that's giving kids a sense of ownership of their work and that they're excited to participate with Garfield characters. So they're going to have a nickname feature and a password, but the parent is also going to have to verify this password. And that is important because the parent has to approve before a student is able to sign in, because you're not able to have a student sign in and create their own profile. But that also helps us in other ways too. That means the parent can go ahead and go on Professor Garfield with their account, view activities that maybe over the weekend, the parent can go ahead and look at activities and ask their child if they want to go ahead and go through with that. And they can go ahead and see their progress and the badges they're earning, but they can't see actual grades. So this is what the student page is going to look like. You can see here that I haven't entered in my class code yet, so I don't know what my homework assignments are, but I can simply just enter that in right there. It tells me I'm now in Ms. Wiles' class, and it tells me what the class code is. So I know that Anne assigned me a Fishing with Phonics module. So we're going to go ahead and do that module. So this is your standard Fishing with Phonics. We haven't fully designed out what this will look like, but we've done basic usability to get a sense of what the problems are and what will make this more fun. So that'll be part of our development plan when we rebuild this in HTML, is that this module is going to be updated to be more usable and more fun for kids. But we're just going to run through it. So you see, after I've completed Fishing with Phonics, which is a learning game, I'm given a congratulations. I see what badges I've unlocked. I see how close I am to my next badge. But then I'm also prompted right then to jump over to Narrate Garfield, which is the digital literacy activity. So let's go ahead and do that. So Narrate Garfield is an idea that we worked on with Dr. Shively in creating digital literacy activities. It is designed for the kindergarten student based on a phonics module. The idea behind Narrate Garfield is that students are going to be learning how to record audio using a phone or tablet. So right here in the top left corner, you're going to have a video that's very just pushes them in the right direction as to where they can learn how to do this, but it's not, this is how you record audio. It's not going to be step by step, this is how the process works, but it is going to nudge them in the right direction. And you can see the description of the activity as well. So the idea is that students are going to have 4 comics to pick from. So let's say I want to do this comic. Then I'm going to narrate the comic while I'm recording the audio. I'm going to upload that narration. Now, this is just the first part of Narrate Garfield. What you're going to see here is that we've completed one step with Professor Garfield, and we're immediately going to reward the student, but this is optional. We're saying that if you can unlock an extra learning badge by simply answering this question. But if you don't want to, you can go ahead and move on. But what this question is designed for is to target that kind of reflection. Did they like the audio they recorded? How could they improve it? So then the next part is the more fun part, where students will be able to create their own comic. So with the same comic, we're going to have the comic holes empty, and there will be not blank spaces where students can type in anything, but Garfield approved words that can make a coherent story. So students have that customization of their own Garfield comic and their own say in the Garfield universe. Then it's the same process. They're going to go ahead and upload that narration. And here you can see the different digital literacy badges that they've unlocked, as well as that they've reached silver, or they've reached a silver level. So they're going to be able to unlock a prize, a Professor Garfield prize based on their accomplishments. So that completes the demo. So I'm briefly going to touch on how we developed this prototype. So what we first did is we sketched out the architecture of the website. And this was very rough. This was just trying to get an understanding. We started out with a card sorting activity, and then we moved on to actually sketching out what we thought this website might look like, how we can make it accessible for teachers, but still fun and trusted for parents. So then what we ended up doing is that we tested that within our group and created 2 paper prototypes that we then took out to Burris Elementary School and conducted a very simple usability protocol. There's about 5 tasks, and we asked them follow-up questions for that usability protocol. And that's how we got all that feedback on how to make Professor Garfield as accessible as possible for teachers. So the prototype you see today is the end result of this feedback. However, noting that moving on in the future, we are going to be showing, or we're going to be evolving the prototype for parents and students, which have 2 very different sets of needs than a teacher does. So here's our tentative timeline for the project. We're going to begin grant writing and start to do that in May and into the summer. And then in the fall, we're going to start developing the digital literacy curriculum. And then that's in collaboration with Kate Shively and then students in Teachers College. And then we're also doing usability, and we started by creating a giant appendix that has all the existing Professor Garfield content with summaries of each game. And that way we can quickly tell this game is garbage, this game has potential. So we can go ahead and pick out what games we want to focus on for usability and heuristic testing in the fall. And then in the spring, we're going to start designing those other digital literacy modules. And that's going to be very helpful to have the brainstorming sessions with elementary ed students, because how you make a digital literacy activity for math is not something that we're experts in, so having that partnership is very strong for us. And then from summer 2017 to 2019, we're just going to continue developing UI UX research, and we're going to be, and then also in the fall and the spring next year, starting to bring in parents and then students. So for this presentation, I want to talk about the process our team took to reach this end prototype. So what you can see is we had 3 phases. We had the research phase, an evaluate phase, and a cheat, or it's we had a research phase, an evaluate phase, and then a re-envision phase. So what you can see here is how we worked in parallel, but then came together. So what we started out is that 2 teams worked on, or our team was divided, where we had academic research going on, and then empathy research, and then we came back together, and that's when we developed those key findings. From those key findings, we then split off again to start doing that architecture analysis and usability. And then we also did the beginning of our content analysis. And then we met together, and we were able to go ahead and create those 2 final paper prototypes. And from those, we went ahead and made our final prototype, while also considering our future development, what we need to be thinking of for Professor Garfield in the future. And that is where we've ended this semester.